Hey there, Reverend Sully, Eric O'Sullivan, ordained on the internet. The caveat, as always, please do not burn your hands holding on to my hot takes. If you do, then that's on you, pal. Today, I want to talk about Dune, the movie Dune, Denis Villeneuve's 2001 Dune. I actually watched all the Dunes last week. I watched David Lynch's 1984 Dune. I watched the 2003 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries, Frank Herbert's Dune and Children of Dune. I also watched the amazing documentary Jodorowsky's Dune about the failed first attempt at adapting Dune for the big screen in the mid-1970s. It was in production for 2 years, and it failed at the final hurdle of trying to get it past the Hollywood executives. And now we have Denis Villeneuve's recent adaptation, which I watched, and I watched them all comparatively. It was an amazing movie. Good stuff. Great sound design, great casting. I thought that the dialogue was a bit too snappy, yet I'm not here to critique the movie. I'm here to talk about something a bit odd, sinister, pervasive that's happened in pop culture and in fiction since 2016. And it's about agenda. And it's about changing story notes to suit modern agenda. I perceive as modern agenda storytelling to be very needy. Just, I need you to understand me. I need you to listen to me. I need you to accept my point of view. It's just, I understand needy people. I grew up in the South Boston projects, surrounded by constant need and angling for leverage. So I really can't be sold on bullshit. It was the most disappointing story note, and it was well done, I guess. I mean, I want to bring up one of my favorite characters in Dune, and one of my favorite story notes in Dune, the first book. I'm going to compare the three instances to its modern its modern presentation, and why the story was changed. Now, it's not to say that the actress who was cast in the role did a bad job. No, she did an amazing job. Really well done. Brava to Sharon Duncan Brewster. Thank you for your portrayal of Dr. Kynes. Dr. Kynes is it's not a small role. There are no such things as small roles. It was a very poignant character, there for a big reason. And Dr. Kynes has remained, for me, a very tragic figure. Now, there is room for tragic figures in fiction. It's literal pathos. It's about evoking pity. It's about evoking a sense of sadness. The fate of Dr. Kynes was pathetic in a literal sense, meaning evoking pathos. It was a very sad story note. The fate of Dr. Kynes did not have to happen like that. It was tragic. It was unnecessary. It was brutal, and it was Dr. Kynes' death is just a reminder about the brutality of the brutality of an oppressive force, and the carelessness and joy that they take in murdering someone, or to remove someone from the equation. And what I mean to also point is that the original character of Liet Kynes was a man. And it doesn't matter what their alleged race is. Just that person was a man. And for the 2021 Denis Villeneuve's Dune, the character was race and gender swapped. It's the traditionally, Dr. Kynes has been a Caucasian person with sandy hair. Dr. Kynes is the imperial planetologist. They're on assignment to the planet Arrakis by the Emperor Shaddam IV. They are a neutral player. They're not aligned to House Atreides. They're not aligned to House Harkonnen. They have a job on Arrakis, and that is to evaluate the ecosystem and to report back to the Imperium about spice production, about the culture of the planet. Little does the Imperium know that Dr. Kynes went native and was accepted by the Fremen, the natives of Arrakis, as part of a sietch, as part of a tribe, as one of them. Dr. Kynes actually fell in love with a Fremen and had a child with a Fremen. This child is Chani. Chani is the love interest of Paul Muad'Dib Atreides and the mother of Leto II, the God Emperor of Dune. Very pivotal role. Dr. Kynes his heart is won over by the Atreides with their selflessness by Leto I, the Duke Leto. The famous line, "Damn the spice," moved Dr. Kynes so much so that they began to abandon their neutrality. And in the end, it was Dr. Kynes helped Paul and Lady Jessica escape into the desert so they could find their destiny. Yet, in the 3 instances before 2001 Dune, Dr. Kynes held the same fate. I'm going to read an excerpt from the novel. Then I'm going to show on my iPhone video captures of all 3 movies. Hopefully this will avoid any copyright strike with some pauses and interruptions. And so let's go. I mean, and what I want to do, though, is to prove that since 2016, that the pervasiveness of agenda, of identity politics, and intersectional feminism has changed the narrative so much so that it changed the story beat. And it changed Dr. Kynes' pathetic fate to a heroic fate. Why? Because of the gender swap. And it changed the agent of Dr. Kynes' fate. Why? Because of identity politics, with changing the race, the pre-existing race of the character from Caucasian to a person of color. The agency of the character's fate had to have been changed. And what I guess was alarming the most, that as soon as I found out about the casting of Dr. Liet Kynes in Denis Villeneuve's Dune, I knew that this was going to happen. As we say in Dune, it was as obvious as a man walking across the bled. You can see them from miles away. I saw this coming from miles away. I called this months before the release, and I was right. I was right on both accounts, that not only with the race change, they're going to have to change the agent of Dr. Kynes' fate, but also they're going to change it from a pathetic, tragic death to a heroic death. And let's get into it. So, from Dune, the book, this is the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen talking. He's speaking to one of his minions. The Imperial lackey, this Kynes, the Baron said. He was playing a double game, eh? I'd stake me reputation on it, my lord. His reputation. Have the man killed, the Baron said. My lord, Kynes is the Imperial planetologist, His Majesty's own sir. Make it look like an accident, then. So in the book, Dr. Kynes' fate is ordered directly by Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. There's a subsequent chapter after Kynes is found by the Harkonnen armies that Dr. Kynes is thrown into the desert without a still suit. The still suit is a fictional device meant to reclaim body water, and that a person can survive for weeks with a fully functional still suit. There's a chapter following this where it is Kynes wandering the desert, sunburnt and blistered, on the verge of death, having an imaginary conversation with his father, realizing that realizing that this is the end, but he will not go, he will continue to go on, and he will survive. He's got hope, and a pre-spice mass under his feet blows up. This is how spice comes to the surface of the sands, and his life is ironically ended by what he loved the most, the sands of Arrakis, the spices of Dune, and so it had an irony to it. It really did. And I am now going to play. Let's see, will this show? Hopefully we won't get a copyright strike, but this is from the 2000 sci-fi movie, sci-fi miniseries. This is Vladimir Harkonnen, the Baron, ordering the death of Liet Kynes.
A pity that you had to get mixed up in this business, Doctor. I'm not mixed up in it, Baron. I'm the Emperor's servant.
This is Dr. Kynes himself.
Less. So you did not lead them to that warren of Fremen's scum? That was Idaho's idea. He had forged a friendship with them. Oh, yes, we know all about Idaho and his efforts on the Duke's behalf. A foolish, desperate gamble.
This is basically the kangaroo court of Liet Kynes.
Be sure he recalls his flimsy denials when he's face to face with death's sweet smile.
Remember, the Harkonnens are bad guys. They're meant to be bad guys. Now I'm going to show a clip from the 1984 David Lynch's Dune. Now, David Lynch adapted Dune after one reading of the book. He wrote the screenplay. In fact, that in the TV version, he was so mad about the changes, he had his name taken away from the credits, where that Alan Smithy directed it, and the screenplay was written by Judas Booth. This is both David Lynch himself. But Lynch adapted this. So here we have the death sentence of Dr. Kynes, where it's a little different. In this scene, the Beast Rabban, the Harkonnen overseer of Arrakis, ruins Liet Kynes' still suit, played by Max von Sydow, and Harkonnen is ordering the death of Liet Kynes. Let's watch.
Go now. Take him to his desert to die. Go.
And that's the fate of Dr. Kynes in the 1984 David Lynch version. Now, all three versions of this have the Harkonnens being the agent of Dr. Kynes' fate. And in all three versions, it's a fate where he's left to die in the desert. And for me, it's always been an emotionally stirring character note. It is literally pathetic. I mean, there was no need for that. He suffered so greatly at the end of his life, and it just evokes so much emotionally in me. I mean, this character remains for me just one of the most poignant characters in the original Dune. And now, spoilers. I just want to say spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. I'm going to show a scene from the 2001 Denis Villeneuve Dune, the death of Dr. Kynes, again. Yet, now we have the race swap and gender swap. And I'll explain myself before I show the clip, that by changing the character's gender to a woman, since 2016, and there's been a narrative change. There is no more victimization of women in movies. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. That's for you to decide. We notice a tonal shift in production shows such as Game of Thrones and in Westworld, and also the Marvel cinematic universe, where there's this huge shift in girl first and male incompetence to make girl look better. And these are just simple terms. I'm not saying this to enrage anyone. This is just if you don't notice this, then, you know, that's on you. And so this is the fate of Dr. Kynes in Denis Villeneuve's 2001, where she's calling a sandworm for a ride, as Fremen do, with a thumper. So there's a sandworm on its way. And she has just left the Paul and Lady Jessica. And she allowed them to escape. And the agent of her death has changed. A Sardaukar comes from behind her and stabs her. And why? What's with the difference? Well, Harkonnens are slavers. This is part of the mythology and part of the story of Dune. In fact, hero Gurney Halleck grew up on Giedi Prime, the homeworld of House Harkonnen, he was a slave. His ink-vined scars are a constant reminder of those days. His hatred for the Harkonnen is great, as his love for House Atreides, his savior. He was a slave, and but to the modern agenda, to the modern narrative, you cannot have a person of color be victimized by a slaver. That's just modern agenda storytelling. Also, that's identity politics. Okay, what's intersectional feminism got to do with this? Changing the gender to a woman, you can no longer have a victimization of a woman. What happened was, and I predicted this, was that somehow they're going to make Liet Kynes' death heroic, which they do. While she's dying, she's about to be decapitated by a Sardaukar. There's 3 of them. She pounds on the sand, calling the maker, the Shai-Hulud, the sandworm, to their position. And she heroically dispatches her killers along with her, and therefore having a heroic death, not the pathetic death, as was in the previous 3 versions. Let's take a look at it real quick. It's a little washed out in color, but here she is. And there's a knife in her back. And here's that Hans Zimmer music that everyone's talking about. It's good shit. Yep, she's been stabbed in the back by a Sardaukar, an emperor's soldier. And she's accused of being a traitor by the emperor's soldier here, the Sardaukar. You see, the agent of Dr. Kynes' death has been changed, and their fate has been changed. See? Now she's emulating the thumper. She's literally calling the sandworm. And the sandworm underneath them, the sands will swallow them. I know it's a little washed out. That's okay. But now this is an heroic death, as opposed to the tragic death of Dr. Liet Kynes in the previous versions. Now, I just want to say again, Sharon Duncan Brewster did a great job on this role. I mean, this was well shot. As a story note goes, it fits with the story. But I ask, why change the story at all? Why was the need for changing the story? The need comes from the agenda storytelling, that platform, the narrative change, and the necessity for these, what we derisively call checking off boxes. And, well, I guess that's the only thing critical I have to say about Denis Villeneuve's Dune, besides the dialogue being a bit too snappy. But it's made for modern audiences. I don't buy that. Dune's eternal. Dune's classic. Dune is Iliad level. And, but it's just a modern retelling, huh? Yet the need for changing Dr. Kynes' death scene was done out of the neediness of these agendas. The neediness of checking these boxes off. There was only one need to change Dr. Kynes' tragic death, was to make these modern agendas happy. That's what I have to say. That's my hot take. And you know what? Give me a thumbs up if you like this kind of content. Give me a thumbs down if you think I'm way off base here. I can take it. I'm a big lad. Leave a comment in the comment section. Let's continue this conversation. What do you have to think? Are you a Dune fan? Were you disappointed in the story change that accompanied the casting change? And you know what? Give me a subscribe if you can. I'm an ordained minister. I'm a spiritual person. I make theology and spiritual videos. I do a Sunday sermon. I'm also a professional chef. I make delicious cooking videos to turn you on to making nutritious, delicious, and beautiful food that you can share with your family. I mean, breaking bread with loved ones is a thing you should not take for granted. Value your time together and break bread and eat together as much as you can and have delicious, nutritious food. And I can show you a thing or two. So give me a subscribe. So thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, I have no problems with identity, with diversity and representation. It's just when it's done in such a ham-handed, pervasive way to just, like I said, I'm not buying it. Why change the story note? I mean, the fate of Dr. Kynes was an emotionally moving thing. And there was only one reason for the change, and that's just the modern identity politics. And that just always will rub me the wrong way. Well, thanks for tuning in. Cheers, and you have a great day.